Hello, I'm Daniela. In today's video, I'm going to show a slow stitching technique of stitching a rainbow to use in your work. Now, there are a couple of ways to do this technique. You can make the rainbows ahead of time, keep them in your stash, and then just sew those pieces, those finished pieces, to your work. Or you can sew the rainbow directly to your piece as you're creating it. The beauty of the rainbow technique is that you can incorporate the colors to match your piece. Rainbows don't have to be the standard red, orange, yellow, green, blue. I'll show you my process in real time with each stitch depicted in the video, so bear with me, the video's a little long, but if you enjoy watching the process of the stitching and the ways I correct my mistakes, you'll see that in today's video. And here's my process. So here you have a cute little rainbow that really enhances your slow stitching piece, and it's a fun little thing to do. You can have different colors, you can add text, you can incorporate little buttons as well. It's a nice technique, and you can either stitch the rainbows ahead of time, like I've done here, or even here with a little backing, or you can stitch it directly to your piece. I'll just show you my process for creating that rainbow. So here I'm just making a very small rainbow on a little square of an old quilt. I have a Frixion pen, which is just a little marker, felt tip pen, that will mark the fabric, but then if I take some heat to it, like heat from an iron, it will remove the pen. So it's just a guide for me to make my stitches. And now you can make the rainbow any shape you want. You could do it just a standard half circle, you can make it really tall, you can make it really wide. I find that I need a minimum of 3 rings, shall we call them, to make an effective rainbow, but you can use any number. I just feel that 3 is the minimum that I use. So I start to sketch my rainbow, and if it's a little wonky, I can remake the sketch, or if I want it to look very handmade and rustic, I'll just leave it. But here I'm just going to try and make that sketch a little finer. And then I'll just add a second one, a good distance from the first. And when I'm pretty happy with that, I can decide if I want to put the next bow inside or if I want to continue making it very wide. And I think I want to make it just inside these 2 rings. I just find this is a great way to start making that sketch. Of course, you can stitch freehand without any sketch, but that's when I find that my technique makes it very rustic. I'm going to put a 4th little ring over here as well. So this dries fairly quickly, and now I choose my colors. I've already selected 4 beautiful colors of embroidery floss, 2 greens, a yellow, and a coral. I'm going to start with my smallest ring here, which I'm going to just do with this yellow. And now you decide what stitch you want to do. You can do a back stitch, a stem stitch, even just a running stitch. I'm just going to do a straight stitch, and I'm just going to leave a little space in between the stitches. So I'm just going to really carefully come up to the base of that first ring and then just make a stitch. And now from here, I'll gently pull that stitch in, not too snug. I can decide if I want that stitch to be further apart or very close together. And I like the look of just a little gap in between the stitches. So now I'm just going to continue with this little ring with my yellow stitches, and I'm going to strive to make them all approximately the same distance apart and the same size and length for the stitches. And I'll continue this across the entire bow here. Because my stitches are small enough, I can make a little angle here without it looking too much like a geometric angle, like a right angle or a straight angle, and more just a gentle curve. If you want it to be a perfectly gentle curve, I suggest using something like a back stitch or the stem stitch, split stitch, something where the stitches really overlap each other so you get that gentle curve. But for this process, because I want it to look a little bit rustic, I'm just going to create those stitches one by one. This way, if I make a mistake, I can remedy it, or I can adjust it. If I put my needle in too close to one stitch, I can come back and correct it. And that's the beauty of stitching, is like worst case, you just remove stitches by cutting them out and starting again. So I'll continue this all the way to the base of this curve. And that's why I like to make my sketch ahead of time, because then I know exactly where to stop. I'm not just eyeballing it, and my perspective isn't really warped from like a tilted fabric. So I'll have one more stitch in here just to finish it up. And I have the beginning of that rainbow. I'll flip it over, go to another stitch fairly close by, and bring that thread through. And this makes a nice little loop. I'll go through that loop, and I have a knot. And so I'll just trim that off. So now I'll go to my second color, and I'm going to choose this light green. I'm going to do the same process where I start on that line that we sketched out. And again, I'm going to make my stitches all approximately the same size, all equally spaced. You could make them differently spaced for each color of your rings, or not. You can just do whatever you want, and that's the beauty of the rainbow. You can use traditional rainbow colors, the Roy G. Biv we learned in school, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, or you could continue and making these rainbows in whatever colors you want. You can coordinate them to your slow stitching. You can just do the colors that you gravitate to. You can do colors that you're inspired by. These particular colors are colors that a friend of mine had me paint a mural in her shop with, and I just have been in love with them ever since. They're a little unexpected. The different shades of green are gentle. They're almost gray or silvery, but they have that very organic nature color and feel to them, and I just love that. So now, as you can see here when I'm doing my stitching, I'm still seeing that pen mark that I made, but that's not a problem. The pen mark will disappear when I take an iron to it. So there I have the second bow to my rainbow. Again, I'll knot off the end. And just clip that thread. I'm going to take that coral color, that beautiful color, and again, start the same procedure. As I go to the outside of the rainbow, I tend to make my stitches just a little bit longer than the stitches in the center. Kind of instinctual, and if I want to keep them smaller, that's totally fine too. I just find that it gives a very nice look. Kind of looks proportional and balanced. But that's the beauty of everybody's rainbow. The stitches will be different sizes, different types of stitches, different lengths. And so therefore each one will look unique. Now over here I can see that this stitch is a little wonky. So I'm just going to remove my needle, use the back of the needle to pull up that stitch and decide where I went wrong with it. So I can see that I'm kind of way off track. So I'll flip it over and pull up that stitch. If I pull too tight, it takes a little more effort to get it up. And once I have the loop here, I can go in there and really pull that stitch out. I'll rethread my needle and just continue stitching. So now I'll take my piece and try and find that right spot that I'm supposed to bring my needle through and continue on it. And that's the beauty and the calmness of stitching, is you just go slow. If you find any errors, you correct them as you go, and then you have a beautiful result at the end. Stitching is not a process of trying to race through your piece. It's about really just finding a soothing process that you enjoy, using materials that you like, whether they're the different colors or the different textures of the threads in the fabric, and just creating something. Now I have one more stitch to finish this color. Take it to the back and I'll knot my stitch again. Now I'm ready for my last color. So for the last color, I have a little deeper green, still on that color family of the green over here. Now I just want to make my last ring here, my last bow on the rainbow. Again, I'm going to make these stitches just slightly longer than the previous rainbow, than the previous bow. And I'm sticking to that sketch that I made for guidance. Now, a rainbow is a very interesting shape because it has a beautiful curve, and curves are very soothing to humans. They're reminiscent of face shapes and eyes, natural shapes in the body, and organic shapes. And a rainbow is interesting because it incorporates color along with that smooth shape. And unlike a circle that's continuous, the rainbow, particularly the artistic ones, are just half shapes. So you have finality to them, some closure. So I'm sure there's a lot more psychology to a rainbow than just the aesthetic looks or the soothing shapes. But it's really kind of a nice feeling. And it's a nice sight to see. The rainbow shape itself has become more trendy, and you can see it with all different color schemes. So it can look anywhere from elegant to boho to very chic. I'll add my final stitch, knot the back, and again I just look for a stitch that looks easy enough to pull through to make my knot, but not that I'm going to tug at my threads. And now I'm ready for my iron. So I'll just take this iron and just press it down on my fabric, and it really cleans up that rainbow. So that's a very fun effect. I really love the way that looks. So that's my technique for stitching a rainbow that I can add to my slow stitching pieces. I particularly enjoy it because the colors don't have to be traditional. They can be very unique and very personal to what you're looking for. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please give it a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe. Thanks for joining me today.